Hello everyone. Thank you so much once again and Happy New Year to everyone. This is the first series of Meet the Titan in year 2014 and we are hoping to continue the same. This series is a little bit special because we have Nishar with us. I don't need to give much of background about him, but currently he is an SVP product strategy with LinkedIn, and at the same time he is a very keen investor in a lot of stuff, especially big data and other new cutting edge technology. So he's going to spend next 35-40 minutes talking about himself, and then we will get a chance to have our questions. So hold on to your questions and everyone will get a chance. Thank you so much. Deep.
Thank you. It's a good starting to the new year. As I was coming on 237 and all the traffic, I figured half the people may just drop off and decide North 1st Street exit was a better exit to go back home as opposed to come all the way here. But it's great to see everyone here today. Let's start by getting some. We've had a long day, probably the first week back in the office for many people. It must have been very busy. Let's get some energy out. I want everyone to just stand up. If I kept up with my yoga practice, we would do a yoga pose now. But since I've not done that in a while, everybody who currently works at a company that is 1 year or younger, so 0 to 1 year in longevity, please sit down. Okay. Only a couple of people in startups. You have my condolences and fortitude. Very courageous people, that's good. 1 to 5 years. That's good. These are people who passed the Series A financing round. Hopefully you have some runway ahead of you. 5 to 10 years. How many? Public company? Private companies? Private. 5 to 10 is like a really good stretch. You know you're going to go public at some point, right? Or have a great exit. So 10 to 20 years. These are people who are vesting in peace, okay? Their companies are gone public, they have good jobs.
I'm a student, so I don't know what...
You must have done some internship somewhere, right? Yeah, it's all part of it. All part of it. Being a student is a full-time job. If you go to Harvard, you're 400 years old. So this is 20 plus, all of this, is that right?
10 to 20. Sir.
10 to 20, that's right. How many 20 plus? No, just the rest sit down, only 20 plus keep standing.
Wow.
That's quite a bit. So you can all sit down now. We find that roughly about 10 to 15% of the crowd is 20 plus year old company, and this is unique, and here's why. If you work for a technology company, which I'm assuming the vast majority of the people here do, as represented by NASDAQ, only 5% of companies on the NASDAQ listed today existed 20 years ago. Which means 95% of all technology companies do not exist post 20 years. That's a huge deal. And what I'm going to talk about today over the next 30 minutes is my observations working for, I started my life working at Cummins Engine, which is about a 92-year-old company today, all the way to starting my own company later on, to Google and now LinkedIn, which are in the 10 to 15 year range. I want to give my observations from what I've learned over the last 23 years of what enables companies to be in this 5%. What enables the companies to exist beyond the norm, to be in the top 5% of really being there. I'll start the observations with a small story about 3 scary words. So the year was roughly like 95, 96. It was a nice warm morning, but I wasn't feeling very good. Okay, I could literally feel the bile rising up from my stomach and getting that pungent, acerbic taste in my mouth, which is not a good taste. This was the 3rd week in a row this was happening. So I had my one-on-one with my manager that afternoon. And I was behind on the project. Not only was I behind on the project, I did not know how to solve the problem at hand. Things were very different 3 years before that. I was a student, and remember the people in class like who always had their hands up when the teacher asked the question. They always got their assignments done on time. People like Praveen and Jagesh. Actually, I was one of them too, the annoying people. I had all the answers before the questions were being asked. And now here I was 3 years later and I didn't have the answer. Not only did I not have the answer, I had no clue how to find the answer. And that put me in a very, very uncomfortable position. I did not know what to do. I was walking in that afternoon, walking down the long hall to my boss's office, all sorts of thoughts were coming through my mind. What should I tell him? Should I make up a story again and try and buy myself one more week in the hopes I'll figure this out? What if I told him the truth? What if he fired me on the spot? I mean, H1 visa guy, you lose your job here. What if I don't get the promotion I thought I was going to get later that year because I was doing such a great job otherwise? So I walk in and I sit down and say, and Tom asked, my boss's name was Tom. He was a very straight shooter, Midwestern engineer, bearded guy, no nonsense. Very, very good engineer. So I sit down and Tom says, Sudeep, how are things going? How's the project going? And I could feel that lump in my throat. And I looked at him and I started saying the 3 scariest words I'd ever uttered in my life. I don't know how to do this project. And even as I was trying to put on a brave front with him, inside I was feeling like this. I was waiting for that barrage of, what an idiot. How could you not know how to do this? It's such a simple problem. Here was a guy who was like the chief engineer in a company. He could solve any of these problems like this for breakfast. But instead, Tom looked at me. He pulled out his pad and said, oh, okay. Why don't we try and solve it together? That's it. None of the, I'm an idiot, do you understand what you're talking about? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why didn't you come to me earlier? All sorts of things that he could have said. And in that moment, he gave me the best lesson I've ever gotten in my life, which is you have to be open to learn every single moment of your life, whether it's professional or personal. He gave me permission to learn something that I thought you only did in school. And in receiving that, I gave him permission to teach me. Something we all need to do every day. We need to give permission to everybody around us to teach us, to unburden ourselves of this huge thing over our head which says we have to have all the answers. Trying to have intellectual curiosity, the desire to learn something new every day, not resting on your laurels or believing you have the right answer, is the most important thing that great product-led companies do, and the people who run those companies do. In 2001, I launched a product. I was at Siebel Systems at that time. And that product built something on the Microsoft platform. It was a huge enough deal that Bill Gates actually flew down. And we had a huge customer conference at Moscone. There were 5,000 people there, Siebel and Microsoft customers. And Tom Siebel and Bill Gates were going to present and unveil this product. A few minutes before the keynote address, Will comes backstage. I'm there trying to make sure the demo is going okay and everything. So he comes and says hello to the couple of us. Then he walks straight over to the AV person and all the equipment that was there. And he starts fiddling with it. And he starts asking the guy questions. He's like, so how does this work? What's the backup? How does this go up on the screen when you're doing this? What kind of machine do you have? What's the operating system? Did he have to do all that? It was genuine intellectual curiosity. Bill may have never seen the back end of how these big presentations got done. He was genuinely curious. Mark Zuckerberg wants to enter China. Besides the political reasons that are there, he also understands that a social network, the way it resonates with its users, is you have to understand the cultural aspects of how people work with each other. So what is he doing? Besides running a multi-billion-dollar company, he's learning Mandarin. He's learning the language so he can understand the culture of that particular country. He doesn't have to do that. He's got 6,000 people who work for him. He can outsource that learning to somebody else. He can say, look, we are in charge. Go figure out China for me. But he still possesses that intellectual curiosity. And it's that desire to always continue to do better for yourself and for your company. That's what makes the difference in terms of where companies go. The desire to keep learning brings me to the second observation, which you also find in great product-led companies, which is the ability to walk in the user's shoes. Is the ability to really understand what is it that your products are used for, why do the users buy them, and what do they do with them. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, today I'm going to use Google. Today I'm going to buy a Cisco router. They don't say that. They say, today I got to make a living. The way I make a living is I build data centers. And the way I build the best possible data centers is I buy Cisco gear, maybe. The person who builds Cisco gear feels that's the most important job in their life. But for their customer, they could care less. They could be buying Juniper. They could be buying something else that's coming out the next day. So the company that survives and thrives is the one that really understands what goes on with the user's lives. In the summer of 1996, I would wake up at 6:30 in the morning every Saturday. I'd get all dressed, and by 8, I would show up at work. Not because I upset my wife and she had put me in the doghouse, but because at 8 in the morning, a truck driver would show up, and we would take from a local grocery distribution center. I would hook up my computer to his engine. I was building engine controllers at that time. And we would go on a run from Columbus, Indiana to Cincinnati, Ohio, and come home by 2. I would hook up my computer to the engine, would try different algorithms, and I would collect data along the way. Now, I could have easily gone in, hooked up the computer and said, bye-bye, go do your run and come back, and I would collect that data later on. But I didn't do that. I hopped in the truck cab with him. Because I wanted to feel, with different algorithms, I was building cruise controllers. What would happen? How did the engine respond? What happened when he took that engine, and these are the big 18-wheeler trucks. You double clutch, there are 12 gears. It's very hard to maneuver those things. I wanted to know how it felt with the different algorithms that I built. What would happen if I tweaked this one variable? What happened when he was on the open highway versus when he was going on an off-ramp and going around country roads? You learn interesting things about their lives. You learn the fact that it's one of the worst possible jobs anyone can have, to be a truck driver. You learn that when we cut them on the highway, because they are going too slow for us, and we speed up next to them and then get in front of them and then slow down, that's the worst possible thing we can do from a safety perspective. Because it takes a truck 6 times as much distance as a car to come to a full stop. And by doing this, we are effectively putting a road hazard in front of them. You learn the fact that these are people who live from hand to mouth because they are working non-stop and they have really bad family life because 3 days before Christmas, they may get a load. They live in the East Coast and they have to deliver something on the West Coast and they have to take that job because if they don't, somebody else will. That's why it is the highest churn job ever. If you ever open up the classified section of any newspaper anywhere in the country, the most help wanted ads are for truck drivers. But as we were doing this, I learned some other things too. I learned the fact that there are these things called gravel runoffs. Does anyone know what those are? Yeah. And if you go from here to LA on Tijon Pass, as you're going down, you see all this gravel runoffs on the side. Well, they are there because when you have a fully loaded truck, that thing has a lot of momentum going downhill. And you can't use your brakes all the way, because if you do that, you run out of your brakes. Once you do that, you have a runaway truck. So the runoffs are available so that you can take the truck there if you feel you're losing your brakes. And the gravel acts as friction. It acts as your brakes. So you go there, your brakes cool down, you get your braking power back, and you go back down. And as we are doing this throughout the whole summer, about 4 to 5 months, something clicked in my head. I said, okay, so a normal truck only gives you 5 to 6 miles per gallon on diesel. It uses a lot of power to do a variety of things, including, they have 2 types of brakes. There are the regular brakes and they have air compressor brakes, which are special brakes. The air compressor uses diesel power to get charged up so that you can give that braking power. Also, a normal truck has ups and downs, so there are lots of places where they don't have to use diesel power, they can use momentum. What if, instead of charging the air compressor with diesel power, you can charge it with motive power? When it's going down, charge it, it's free energy, and you get extra braking. So I designed something at that time which got a bunch of patents, and 20 years later it's still being used in many of those engines. Which brings me to the third observation, which is innovation is not instant. Which feels very ironic and very paradoxical, isn't it? Because the whole definition of innovation is it didn't exist yesterday and then it showed up today. On January 9, 2007, something very interesting happened in the valley. Kalpesh knows what that was.
2007.
Yes, January 9, about 7 years ago. Come on, you're the biggest fanboy. This was unveiled.
iPhone.
This was unveiled to the world. Okay? Isn't this the living, well, not living, but inanimate object example of the biggest innovation we've witnessed in recent history?
Yes.
It was, right? And it came out of nowhere. So what am I talking about? When you think of the iPhone, what are the things that you feel are most innovative? Like, what are the features people think of?
Multi-touch. Touchscreen.
Multi-touch, what else?
Usability.
Usability,
It's a one killing feature
yeah.
that stands the product, different from others, which is the browser and the usability.
The browser and the usability.
App Store.
App Store. Mobility, so you can do whatever whenever you want. Okay?
Camera, all in one.
Camera all in one. So it's got more things, right? All those things together made it a hugely innovative product. But think of touch. Let's just deconstruct the iPhone for a second. Think of touch. Anyone here use the Palm Pilot? Yeah. What did it have? What was the thing that you liked about it?
Stylus.
Yeah, stylus and touch. Touch worked. The Apple Newton had touch, it didn't work. That's a different story. The Palm Pilot had touch. You talk about beauty and usability. Remember the Motorola Razr? The first beautiful phone out there. It took this from a utility device and made it into a piece of jewelry almost. Right? Women wanted their pink razors and the gold razors. iPhone gold color was invented long ago. Email, whatever, whenever you want to do. BlackBerry, of course. You can deconstruct the vast majority of features we love about this phone, and you can find it somewhere else. The genius of Steve Jobs was that he could look at all of this stuff and synthesize it together in one package and give it to us in a meaningful package. And that's what innovation was. So innovation always feels like a step change. But really what it is, it's a continuous movement from one level to another. But it happens at disparate points in time. And because it happens like this, we don't see it. And what we see is the final product that shows up here. The biggest mistake companies make is they go looking for silver bullets. But what you have to remember is that every silver bullet is made of multiple lead bullets. Innovation is not instant. It's a continuous step change, which is in itself a paradoxical statement to make. But winning companies understand that. And they don't go after that unicorn. They don't go after that one silver bullet that will solve all their problems. Instead, they have a variety of means of getting to that innovation point. Steve Jobs also gave us something else. So he put a sharper edge on something that you find in winning products, which is the pursuit of perfection. How many people here had the first iPhone besides Pankaj? He has them all. Do you remember when you first brought that box home? No. You may have gotten lucky. You got it online, you paid someone extra money on eBay, or you stayed over. Did anyone here stand overnight? Just all together? Yeah, besides Pankaj. You brought it home. So like the most anticipated thing. It was launched in January, and I was there at Moscow when Steve Jobs launched it, along with lots and lots of other people. You went downstairs after he had launched the device. You went down to the basement. That's where they had it. You couldn't touch it. It was like right there, right where that camera is, and you were this far away. And it only rotated like this, behind a plexiglass screen, as if it was the Kohinoor diamond. So you just saw it from far. You couldn't touch it, you couldn't feel it. So you brought it home, you're all excited. You put the box down. I know people who clean their entire home because the iPhone, I'm not kidding you. The iPhone was coming home. Come on. Mother-in-law's coming, who cares? You don't clean the home. You don't even invite her home. The iPhone's coming home. Let's clean the house. Let's make it all neat and clean. They put it down, they set it on the table, and you start opening it. There's no packaging, first of all. Okay, Christmas just ended. Do you know the number one reason why people visit the emergency room on Christmas Day?
Packaging.
Yeah, it's actually that. It is the injuries you sustain when you're trying to open the clamshell packages that everything comes in. It's like people are trying knives and cutters and all sorts of things to get all this plastic out. Thankfully, things are reducing. There's still all the clamshell packaging. Well, the iPhone didn't come in any clamshells. It came in this beautiful box. And you started opening it, and you couldn't just open it. The box had a spring-loaded feel, never before seen. Why? Because it was that feeling of anticipation, that feeling of you are getting something so very special, you have to wait just that extra microsecond more. That is the genius of Steve and his marketing. It is that pursuit of understanding what your brand means, what your products mean, and continuing it all the way down to when you even start experiencing that product. A lot of people have the notion of MVP, minimum viable product. You've all heard it, anytime you build a product. I think it does a great disservice. What people like Steve Jobs taught us is that you want to go for an MWP, a minimum winning product, not a minimum viable product. Because minimum viable product may get you around. Version 1 of the product, that's fine, because you don't know. You know, all the folks here who are 0 to 1 years in your company, you're probably just building your product. You can't wait. You have to see, right? Otherwise, what happens to your funding and everything else that goes with it? So you have to get something out. But when you're in version 2, 3, 4, when you're in a market with lots of competitors, you can't go for MVPs. You have to go for MWPs. You have to really understand what makes your product win. The best example of this is what we see right now in consumerization of the enterprise. A Dropbox, file sharing and file collaboration. That's been an enterprise software problem for a really long time. Microsoft, back in the day, would have this file share drive, right, that we had. They didn't call it the cloud, it was just called a file share somewhere. You would upload your files there so that everyone could do something to it. You brought it down, put it back up, everyone could take it. The most clunky thing, nobody used it. It increased your work time by like 4x. By the time you downloaded the file, you did something to it, somebody else, it was locked, nobody else would work on it, etc., etc. Then Google tried to solve it with Google Docs. The problem is Google Docs doesn't have all the features that you're used to. In the beginning, it didn't even have formatting. You could have any font as you wanted, as long as it was just one. Dropbox changed it all. What they say, the paradigm of file sharing is the same. You put it somewhere, it's whatever file you want. Use, if you like Apple Pages, use it. You don't care. If you like Google Word or Microsoft Word, use it. Use anything that you want. Put it in one place, it magically appears everywhere. It's magic. You don't think. Once after the first setup screen of Dropbox, I would guarantee you don't even remember your password. Guarantee you. They have hundreds of millions of users today. Because they did not stop at an MVP. They figured out what that winning product was going to look like. The pursuit of perfection also enables people to eke out every last sense of what that perfect product would look like. So my last job at Google was managing all of our products for Asia Pacific. It was a huge job. I had to be responsible for everything from search to YouTube for a huge swath of people, about 60% of the world's population. And you're building a special search experience for the Japanese market. And in Japan, and Korea and North Asian markets like that, your pages need to have a little bit of something on them. Okay. So when Google just had a Google box, in Korea, no one clicked on that box because they thought the page was still under construction. It had all this white space in there. You have to put more things. You have to put some pictures, you put some icons, etc. Raj knows that. He knows the story. So Google Japan, we put that. Now, the moment you put pictures and icons, what happens to your page load time? It goes down, right? Clearly, you have to load more, your payload is higher, your page load goes down. Sergey, one of Google's co-founders, hates slow pages. In fact, his life's mission is to ensure that Google is as fast as it can be. So we are sitting in this review every Tuesday for from 2 in the afternoon until whatever time it takes. The founders sit down and they look at all the products. We're doing a product review, Google product review. And so we ask the question, what's the page load time? What's the latency of this page? And the tech lead for the project replies, XXX. And he's like, okay, that seems high. And the tech lead, well prepared, knew what Sergey would want, says, yes, and we've done all these optimizations and so on. It used to be this and now it's this, and we've done every optimization possible, Sergey. We are on it. Sergey says, okay. So we move on to a different topic. Sergey goes onto his laptop. He sort of loses himself from the meeting. Sometimes they do it when they're looking for high-end computer gear on Amazon. So we're like, yeah, what rich people do, we don't know. 15 minutes later, he looks up. And he's like, he calls the tech lead over. He's like, so I went into the source code. And I found these 3 places where you can optimize the code further. And he was right. Now, here's a late 20s billionaire. He could be hanging out with Nobel laureates. He could be advising presidents. He could be kite surfing in Thailand. I don't know what 20-something billionaires do, but he could be doing anything but getting into the source code for a product that was well performant and trying to eke out that last bit of performance from it. That's a true story. But that tells you what that pursuit of perfection means. It doesn't mean do it when it's convenient, do it when the surf is not up and you're not kite surfing in Thailand. It means you have a maniacal focus on providing the best possible user experience to your users because you value and you want to earn their respect every single day. And this leads me to the 5th and final observation, which is all these players have something in common, which is the